A billion-dollar drone test. Military leaders watching. Just seconds before launch, an 8-year-old boy sips his juice and says, "Your drone will crash." Everyone laughs, until the CEO pauses. What this kid says next will not only stop a disaster, it will change his mother's fate, shake the tech world, and unlock a love story no one saw coming. The control center buzzed with the low hum of tension. Walls of glass surrounded the team inside, overlooking the desolate Nevada test range. In the center of the room, a single table held the tablet that would launch a $400 million military drone, the culmination of 5 years of development, dozens of patents, and a billion-dollar defense contract pending approval. Cole Maddox stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Tall, clean-shaven, and dressed in a charcoal gray suit that looked effortlessly expensive, the 38-year-old tech billionaire was the definition of composure. Every executive, engineer, and military official in the room had their eyes on him. "Begin countdown. 10 minutes, one technician announced. Cole gave a small nod. This was it. Years of pressure, speculation, and sabotage from competitors, all riding on this one test. And then, "I played this game before, but your drone will crash." The words were quiet, soft, yet in the silence of the moment, they landed like a punch. Heads turned, slowly, disbelieving. In the far corner of the room, standing just past the entry door, was a boy no older than 8. He wore a slightly oversized NASA hoodie, sneakers that lit up, and clutched a grape juice box in one hand. His brown hair was messy. His expression? Calm, curious, like he was making an observation, not interrupting a major test. Next to him stood a woman, early 30s, brunette, in black slacks and a catering uniform polo shirt. Her eyes went wide with horror. "Jamie," she whispered. "Jamie, no!" Cole Maddox turned, brow furrowing. He walked toward them slowly, the room still frozen behind him. "What did you say, kid?" His voice was measured, controlled, but the edge was undeniable. "The boy," Jamie took a sip from his juice box. "I said your drone's going to crash." Cole stared. "Why?" Jamie shrugged. "The terrain adaptation algorithm you are using is outdated. You did not account for lateral wind drift at low altitude when transitioning between elevation clusters. You are going to lose control before the turn sequence at marker 32. Silence, complete. One of the engineers blinked, looked down at a nearby screen, then back up. Elena Moore, the boy's mother, flushed deep red. "I am so sorry, Mr. Maddox. He does this sometimes. We are just volunteers with catering. I did not know we were not supposed to." Cole raised a hand gently, stopping her. He never took his eyes off the boy. "Who are you?" "I am Jamie Moore," the boy replied. "I like games, and this one looks like that strategy sim with bad physics." Cole glanced back at his team. The technician's hand hovered over the tablet. 7 minutes to launch," someone called out nervously. Cole looked at Elena. "And you are his mother." "Yes. Elena Moore. I promise, we were just delivering water. I did not mean—" "You did not teach him that terminology?" She hesitated. "He just picks things up." Cole turned again to Jamie. "If I keep going, how bad?" Jamie tilted his head. "The drone will lose directional control and start tilting west. The camera will compensate, but you will clip the ridge before it regains altitude." The boy said it with such ease that it almost sounded like a bedtime story. Cole's jaw clenched. He walked back to the main screen. Pause launch. Full review of the current flight code, terrain map, and wind conditions. Right now. Gasps filled the room. "You are delaying the launch because of a child?" One military rep blurted out. "Delay it," Cole said again, sharper this time. And just like that, everything shifted. The countdown stopped. Engineers scrambled, people shouted, and in the corner of the room, a little boy sipped his juice quietly while his mother gripped his shoulder, not knowing whether to run or stay. Cole looked down at his tablet, then back at them. He had a choice. Trust his billion-dollar team, or the boy who looked like he had just come from a second-grade field trip. And yet something about that moment, the clarity in Jamie's voice, the confidence in his eyes, made the decision for him. Cole Maddox had always trusted data, but today, he was about to trust instinct. 2 weeks earlier, the clock on the diner wall ticked past midnight. A fluorescent hum buzzed overhead as Elena Moore wiped down the last table with practiced ease. Her ponytail swayed as she worked, strands of chestnut hair escaping and brushing her cheek. The diner was nearly empty. Just one old man nursing a cup of black coffee and the sound of an old jazz station playing softly in the background. Elena was 32, quick-witted, and effortlessly beautiful even in an oversized server apron and flour-dusted jeans. Her laugh could diffuse any tension in a room, and her sarcasm was so sharp it often took people a full minute to realize they had been roasted. But behind the sparkle in her eyes was something else. An intelligence honed by years of tech training and late-night debugging marathons. Before motherhood changed everything, Elena had led a software development team for a major defense contractor. Her code once flew on reconnaissance satellites. She could read hexadecimal like poetry. But after a brutal divorce and a decision to keep her baby instead of climbing the executive ladder, she walked away from it all. Now she kept her talents quiet and her world small. Just her and her son. That son? Jamie Moore, 8 years old, a chaotic storm of oversized glasses, graphic hoodies, and brilliant comebacks. Elena found him that night, curled up under her desk at home with a half-assembled Raspberry Pi and a box of mismatched drone propellers. "You are supposed to be in bed," she said, hands on hips. He blinked at her. "I am reverse engineering the firmware from Mr. Carr's grading server. He said my algorithm was cheating." Elena crouched, amused. "Jamie, you cannot hack your teacher's system just because he does not understand logarithmic decay." Jamie pushed his glasses up. "I did not hack it. I improved it." She rolled her eyes and pulled him into a hug. "Come on, future CEO. Get some sleep." They lived in a modest apartment above a laundromat, with mismatched furniture and faded Star Wars posters lining the hallway. But it was home. Laughter filled the air more often than complaints. Dinner was rarely fancy, but it was always a shared ritual. Elena's famous 4-ingredient pasta, and Jamie's endless monologues about everything from time dilation to pancake optimization. "Mom," he once said over meatballs, "your spaghetti code is emotionally reckless." He had nearly dropped her fork from laughing. Then came the flyer. The Future Innovations Youth Initiative was sponsoring limited passes to a major tech summit outside the city. Children with exceptional technical interests could attend if accompanied by an adult volunteer. Elena had no business dragging herself into a place like that, but Jamie's eyes lit up at the mention of robotics, and she could never say no to that look. "I will volunteer," she told the program organizer, "if that helps get my son in." She never mentioned her background. No one needed to know that she once wrote diagnostic architecture for military guidance systems, or that she had been one of the youngest team leads in her firm's history. That was another life. This life was simpler. She worked nights, picked up freelance bug-fixing gigs in the early hours, and poured everything into raising Jamie with love, curiosity, and unapologetic nerdiness. On the day of the event, Jamie tugged at his hoodie nervously while Elena tied his shoes and teased him with mock seriousness. "Try not to redesign anyone's encryption protocols today, okay?" Jamie squinted. "No promises." She ruffled his hair. "Just be you, kiddo. That is more than enough." As they walked into the marble-floored lobby of the Veritas Tech Military Demo Center, neither of them knew that within hours, Jamie's little voice would change the trajectory of $400 million. But more importantly, Cole Maddox, the billionaire CEO who prided himself on reading every situation like a chessboard, was about to meet his match in a second-grade coding savant and his former defense sector mother, who never stopped being a quiet genius. And everything was about to begin. The digital clock on the wall flashed red numbers, 45 seconds and counting. Inside the glass-walled command room of Aegis Dynamics' top-secret drone testing facility, tension gripped every corner. Engineers hunched over control consoles. Military contractors stood stiff in full suits. The room was sterile, humming with screens and data feeds. Every heartbeat felt synchronized to that ticking countdown. Cole Maddox stood at the center, tall, immaculately dressed with a jaw carved by boardrooms and battlefield briefings. His eyes scanned the display of the prototype drone as it hovered inside the armored launch chamber, ready for the most high-stakes trial in company history. Aegis Dynamics had spent 3 years and $400 million developing this autonomous surveillance and terrain-adaptive delivery drone. If this test succeeded, it would secure them a 10-year defense contract worth over $2 billion. If it failed, the company's future and Cole's reputation could unravel in a single afternoon. Behind the glass, United States Air Force representatives whispered. Journalists held their breaths from a distance, and the board of directors watched via satellite from 5 time zones away. The pressure was excruciating. That was when Theo Bennett, Cole's second-in-command, longtime best friend, and designated stress relief mechanism, strolled in with a grin and 2 cups of espresso. "Your hands are shaking," Theo said casually, handing one to Cole. "I have seen more composure from reality show contestants on elimination night." Cole took the espresso without a word. His jaw was tight. "You know," Theo added, lowering his voice, "if this works, I think you finally get your name etched on the executive bathroom." "Shut up," Cole muttered. Then, it happened. "Excuse me," came a small voice from the back of the room. "I played this game before, but your drone will crash." The countdown hit 30 seconds. The room froze. Heads turned, blinking. Standing near the refreshment table holding a slightly crumpled juice box was a boy in a space-themed hoodie and oversized glasses. Jamie Moore. His eyes fixed not on the crowd, but on the live flight path simulation displayed on the screen. Beside him, Elena's face turned pale. She stepped forward, whispering sharply, "Jamie, what are you doing?" Jamie, unfazed, pointed at the topography algorithm display. "Your adaptive drift correction is going to overcompensate for wind shear. The altitude logic loop will fail mid-transition." A murmur spread across the room. Elena grabbed his shoulder, her voice trembling. "We are not here to be heroes, we are guests." Cole stared at the boy. "Who let a child in here?" barked one of the colonels in the room. Another voice snapped, "This is a national security asset, not a science fair." Jamie shrank slightly under the weight of it all, but then added quieter this time, "The loop keeps restarting because the terrain model is referencing its own error state. You will see a delay, then a spiral. Game over." The countdown hit 20 seconds. Theo raised an eyebrow. He is either a lunatic or onto something. Cole's fingers hovered over the tablet. He glanced at the code, the pattern, the logic, and something hit him, an eerie familiarity. The terminology Jamie used, the phrasing, it was not childlike, it was not random. It reminded him of something, someone. 10 seconds. He turned to his chief engineer. "Does what he said make sense?" The engineer hesitated. "There might be a theoretical glitch. We patched the compensation protocol last week, but it has not been field validated." Cole's gut twisted. It was not fear, it was instinct. The same instinct that had made him a billionaire in an unforgiving world. He slammed the emergency override. "Abort the launch," he ordered. A chorus of groans and protests erupted around him. "You cannot be serious. You pulled the test because of a child? The cost of this minute alone. Do you realize what this means?" But Cole did not flinch. The countdown froze at 6 seconds. The drone whirred softly inside its bay, its blades slowing. All that investment, all that pressure, put on hold because one 8-year-old spoke up. Theo watched him carefully. "You want to tell me what just happened?" Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to Elena and Jamie. "I want to talk to you both," he said slowly, "right now." The door to Aegis Dynamics' secure briefing chamber hissed shut behind them. Inside, a massive holographic display floated over the table, showing the terrain model of the test field. The screen flickered between the aborted drone path and preloaded simulations. The lighting was cold, sterile. Tension hung in the air like static. Cole Maddox sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, brow tense. Theo lounged across from him with a protein bar and barely concealed intrigue. Engineers stood frozen at their consoles. Security officers lingered near the door, unsure whether this was an emergency debrief or an interrogation. And in the middle of it all, standing on tiptoe to reach the edge of the table, was 8-year-old Jamie, still holding his juice box, now lukewarm. Cole folded his hands. "You said our drone would crash. Prove it." Jamie blinked, then nodded solemnly. He pulled a second-hand tablet from his backpack, its case scuffed and covered with cartoon character stickers. Elena stepped forward as if to stop him, but paused, her eyes tracing Cole's expression. He was not mocking Jamie. He was listening. Jamie tapped quickly on the screen, hands precise, movements almost rehearsed. "Your wind compensation matrix loops through a dynamic terrain feedback model," Jamie said, voice soft but confident. "But you coded it to account for seasonal foliage density instead of real-time drift. Here." He dragged his finger across the screen. A translucent green map overlaid the 3D model on the war room display. "Now, simulate eastbound movement at 14 meters per second, Jamie continued. "Right! There!" A blinking red icon popped up on the edge of the projection. A warning flag. Aegis's chief engineer stepped forward. "That zone is marked as low priority." Jamie frowned. "Because the AI thinks the wind will push the drone left, but it won't." He switched the model view. Layered winds, drift vectors, real-time updates scraped from public weather satellites. The engineer's mouth fell slightly open. "If the foliage is denser than predicted," Jamie said, "the adaptive loop overcompensates and clips the autopath correction by 4 degrees. Cole stood up, eyes narrowing, "Which means..." Theo leaned back, biting into his snack. "It means our $400 million bird would have taken a hard right into someone's grandma's backyard." The room went silent. One of the government observers broke the quiet with a soft curse under his breath. Another tapped frantically at a tablet. "Can someone verify this simulation?" The projection began rehanding with military-grade inputs. 30 seconds later, the exact trajectory Jamie predicted lit up the board, with a fatal red zone. A civilian boundary, an off-limit airspace, a disaster in the making. Chaos. Voices layered on top of one another. "How did no one catch this? We just avoided a PR nightmare. This changes everything about Phase 2. Hemp saved the damn test." Elena wrapped a protective arm around Jamie's shoulder, uncertain whether to be proud or absolutely terrified. Theo, now watching the kid like a chess grandmaster watches a rising prodigy, leaned over to Cole and muttered, "Remind me never to play anything strategic with this kid." Cole said nothing at first. He was staring at Elena. She looked different now. Not just beautiful, but composed, intelligent, unreadable. A quiet storm. He finally asked, "Where did he learn this?" She hesitated, then answered, "Mostly YouTube." "And Lego?" Cole raised an eyebrow. Elena shrugged. "Also, he gets bored easily. Numbers are his language." Jamie, meanwhile, had wandered to the edge of the table again and whispered to the engineer beside him, "You should re-index the loop delay. It is wasting about 200 milliseconds." The engineer looked at him like he had seen a ghost. Outside, the press was already speculating about the test delay. Inside, the board members began scrambling for revised reports and crisis control strategies. But Cole had made his decision. "Reschedule the test," he said calmly. "Run it again, with Jamie's adjustments logged into the control protocol." One of the aides stammered, "Sir, Are we seriously basing our redesign on a child's hobby tablet? Cole replied, no, we are basing it on accuracy. He turned to Jamie. Would you like to see your code fly, kid? Jamie lit up. Can I name the drone? Cole cracked the first real smile anyone had seen all day. You just earned it. Elena looked stunned. She opened her mouth to object, to keep them grounded, but then stopped. Jamie had just saved a $400 million prototype, with juice on his shirt and a sticker-covered tablet. Maybe it was time to stop underestimating her son. Or herself. By the next morning, the media storm had already begun. Headlines splashed across industry feeds. Drone test halted by an 8-year-old? Is Aegis Dynamics gambling military contracts on a kid's hunch? Inside Aegis headquarters, the mood had shifted sharply. Cole stood at the far end of the mahogany boardroom, arms folded as voices clashed around him. The board of directors, 12 men and women in suits worth more than Elena's entire savings, were not amused. This is a liability nightmare, one snapped. We let a civilian child access prototype data, another spat. This is not a daycare, Cole. An older woman, the head of legal, tapped her pen. You are playing with fire. If this gets out of hand, it is not just your contract on the line. It is the future of this company. Cole kept silent, jaw clenched. He did not need reminding. He had built Aegis from the ground up, brick by bloody brick. But he also knew what he saw yesterday. Jamie had been right. And Elena had said 3 lines to his lead architect in passing and caused a 20-minute stunned silence. She spoke the language of system flow like it was muscle memory. He was not ignoring that. Once the board stormed out, Theo lingered behind. He stood by the espresso machine, trying to act casual. You sure you are sleeping enough? Theo asked, sipping. Because letting an 8-year-old near missile-grade hardware sounds like something from a superhero origin story. Just saying. Cole smirked. I am not letting him near it. I am letting him see it. And his mom? Cole hesitated. Her. I trust more than most of my engineers. Theo raised a brow. You are sure this is not a midlife crisis wearing combat boots? Cole did not answer, because the truth was, he was not sure. He only knew his gut had never screamed this loudly. Later that day, he found Elena and Jamie in a quiet R&D wing. Jamie was examining a flight simulator interface while Elena leaned against the wall, arms crossed, not looking thrilled. When Cole approached, Jamie looked up, hopeful. Elena did not. We are not your pets, she said quietly. I never said you were. You put us in the spotlight, now strangers are asking about our home address. I am getting hate messages from people who cannot even spell. I can protect you, he said. You cannot even protect yourself from your board. That stung. She did not say it with cruelty, just truth. Jamie spun around in his chair. Mom, please. No one ever lets me do this. They think I am weird. But here, they let me talk. And they listen. Her expression softened, but her eyes were still stormy. Cole glanced at her, trying to read more than words. He lowered his voice. I am offering limited access. You observe. Jamie observes. No obligation, no risk. If either of you ever want to leave, the car is waiting. And if we stay, you stay as you are, equal, no token act. She studied him for a long moment. Finally, Elena sighed. If you make my kid cry, I will hack your stock dashboard and turn your yacht into a taco truck. Cole smiled despite himself. Noted. As days passed, Jamie began to bloom like sunlight in a greenhouse. He roamed the labs like he had been born inside a circuit board. The engineers, at first skeptical, began to warm to him. One even asked if he wanted to name a subroutine. Jamie named it Spaghetti Bot, and no one dared change it. Elena stayed back, mostly, but Cole noticed things. The way she suggested bypassing the redundant safety logic in a side conversation, only for his chief of operations to later admit, she had saved 3 months of dev work. Or how she casually scribbled a logistics model on a napkin that outperformed their newest forecasting software. And yet, she never bragged. She never asked for credit. She just existed. Quiet, sharp, beautifully self-contained. Cole found himself watching her more than he should have, listening harder than usual, noticing how she tucked her hair behind her ear when deep in thought, or how she gently corrected Jamie without ever dampening his spirit. One night, Theo caught him staring at the observation room through the glass wall. "She is dangerous," Theo whispered. Cole did not look away. "Why?" "Because you do not know if you are hiring her or falling for her." Cole said nothing. Because maybe it was both. The facility buzzed with anticipation. This was the second live trial, the one Cole Maddox could not afford to botch. Military officials were seated behind reinforced glass. Engineers were huddled behind monitors. Journalists were locked out. This time, there would be no interruptions, no 8-year-old commentary, just a perfect demonstration, or so they thought. The drone launched cleanly. The tracking screen glowed with beautiful precision. Data flowed in steady streams. Cole exhaled quietly, fingers crossed behind his back. Elena and Jamie stood in the shadows beside Theo. Jamie was holding a juice box and fidgeting with his shoelace. At minute 6 of the flight path, a blip appeared. "Thermal irregularity detected," one of the engineers called out. Cole leaned in. "Source?" "Unknown. Looks like a heat surge from a nearby solar panel array," confusing the drone's AI. Suddenly, the drone's path began to drift, subtly at first, then sharply. "Manual override?" Cole asked. No response. "The anomaly is spoofing its own coordinates. It thinks the safe zone is 10 meters west." The room tensed. A collision with the boundary fence would void their military approval. Years of development would implode on contact. Cole's stomach turned to ice. A blur of motion. Jamie stepped forward, eyes locked on the screen. In a blink, he swiped Cole's unlocked tablet from the console beside him. "Jamie!" Elena hissed, reaching for him. Too late. With calm fingers, Jamie brought up the map, tapped into the override menu, and began redrawing the terrain overlay manually. "What is he doing?" Theo muttered. Jamie did not flinch. "The drone's failing because the AI thinks the edge is a wall. But I already beat this level in Drone Quest Elite. It is the same map logic." He rerouted the coordinates using a simplified top-down grid, redefined the boundary, and entered a manual command. On the screen, the drone blinked, then stabilized, then began descending. The landing gear deployed. The drone touched down with surgical grace. Silence. Then chaos. The engineering team leapt to their feet. "Did that just... How did he..." The military observers began clapping, slow at first, then with real weight. A colonel leaned over to one of the aides and whispered something with a nod. A moment of history had just happened. Theo blinked, stunned, then turned to Cole. "You owe that kid a fruit snack, or stock options, or both." But Cole did not respond. He was staring at Jamie, still clutching the tablet like it was a toy, and Elena, who was frozen in place, torn between mortification and awe. She looked up at Cole, eyes wide. "I swear I did not teach him that." Cole walked over slowly, still processing. "You just rerouted a $400 million asset with your thumbs?" he asked Jamie. Jamie shrugged. "You left your admin panel open. That is not very secure." Theo laughed so hard he nearly choked. Cole looked back at the screen. The drone's log showed Jamie's adjustments had not only saved the prototype, but also revealed a deeper calibration issue the team had overlooked entirely. He turned to Elena. His voice was quieter now. "You said you used to code defense simulations?" She nodded hesitantly. "Jamie was watching you all along, wasn't he?" Elena smiled sheepishly. We do not have video games at home. We play Debug the World instead." Cole let out a slow breath. Then, with a half smile, he shook his head. "I just got outmatched by an 8-year-old and his mother." A nearby engineer muttered, "We should just hire them both." No one laughed, because it was not a joke. The facility was quiet. The test had ended hours ago, yet Cole Maddox remained behind, staring at the night skyline from his office's reinforced glass wall. He had canceled 2 board calls, ignored half a dozen messages from the Department of Defense. None of it mattered right now, because the woman he could not stop thinking about was not who he thought she was. Elena Moore stood on the other side of the room, her posture stiff, guarded. She had been waiting for this moment ever since her son touched the CO's tablet. She could see the questions in Cole's eyes, not just about Jamie, but about her. Cole turned, his expression unreadable. His voice was low. "Who are you really?" She looked away for a second, then met his gaze. "My real name is Elena Morgan. I used to lead the AI architecture unit at Novologic's Defense." Cole's eyes narrowed. "Elena Morgan? That Elena Morgan?" She gave a tiny nod. "Yes." He ran a hand through his hair, stunned. "I studied your spatial inference system in graduate school. You wrote the base model for neural predictive logistics. You were on the cutting edge." She smiled faintly. "Was?" Cole took a step closer, trying to process. "You disappeared. The journals stopped citing you. Some people said you went to the private sector, others said you burned out." She took a breath, voice steady. "I got pregnant, the father left, the board quietly replaced me. I was offered a consulting contract, remote, limited hours, lower pay. They called it flexibility, I called it invisibility." Cole's face tightened. "I stayed home with Jamie, taught him everything I knew, took contract jobs fixing bugs at night, changed my name. I stopped being Dr. Elena Morgan and started being Mom." There was no bitterness in her voice, just a quiet, clear strength. Cole stared at her. He had built a multi-billion-dollar company on systems she helped invent, and here she was, working catering shifts, raising a boy who just redirected a drone in real time. Behind them, Theo stepped in, holding 2 coffees. He took one look at Cole's face, then at Elena. "So just to clarify," Theo said with his usual drawl, "you mean to tell me that the woman I saw serving salad yesterday designed the logistics engine that replaced my thesis project?" Elena laughed softly. "Probably." Theo turned to Cole, wide-eyed. "Dude, you've been flirting with an off-the-grid legend." Cole gave him a withering glance. Elena, cheeks flushed, shook her head. "We were not flirting." Theo sipped his coffee. "Speak for yourself." Cole finally smiled, but it was laced with awe. "You could have had anything. Fame. Power." Elena shrugged. "I chose Jamie." A silence settled between them. Respect. Curiosity. Something more. Cole's voice was softer now. "You are still brilliant, Elena, and the world needs to see that." She looked down. "I just want Jamie to be seen. Really seen. Not just as a novelty, but as who he is." Cole nodded, "Then let us start there." For the first time in years, Elena let herself believe maybe she did not have to hide anymore. The press room was packed. Cameras flashed, reporters jostled for space. The backdrop bore the logo of Aegis Dynamics, flanked by flags and digital projections of the drone prototype that now symbolized the company's redemption. But none of that was what made the crowd buzz. It was the sight of an 8-year-old boy in sneakers and a hoodie, clutching a tiny remote-controlled drone, standing beside a woman who looked both composed and uncomfortable in front of the spotlight. Cole Maddox stepped up to the microphone. His suit was sharp, but his expression was softer than usual. He glanced at the 2 figures standing to his left. "I want to introduce you to the 2 people who prevented a $400 million disaster and reminded us all what innovation really looks like." He paused. The room hushed. This is Elena Moore and her son Jamie." Gasps rippled through the audience. Elena's name was already circulating online, but this was the first time the CEO confirmed it publicly. Jamie saw something none of our experts did. And Elena, well, let us just say, we owe more than one breakthrough to her insights over the past few days. The flashbulbs exploded. By evening, the headlines were everywhere. Drone test saved by waitress and son. 8-year-old identifies multi-million-dollar flaw before engineers. CEO backs mother-son duo who averted disaster. Theo leaned against the wall backstage, arms crossed, grinning like a proud uncle. When Elena stepped down from the stage, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor, he intercepted her. "That was brutal," she muttered. He raised an eyebrow. "You just saved the most important defense contract of the year, and all you had to do was look slightly awkward under high-definition lighting." Elena laughed despite herself. "You know," Theo continued, "Cole is offering you a real position, not out of charity, not for publicity, but because you are the smartest person in the room." Elena glanced over at Jamie, who was flying his mini-drone in circles around a potted plant. A young Aegis engineer crouched beside him, fascinated. "I do not know," she said. "It feels strange. I have been invisible for so long." Theo smiled gently. "Maybe it is time to be seen." That night, Elena sat at her kitchen table, staring at two offers, one for her and one for Jamie, a formal invitation to Aegis's mentorship program for prodigious young minds. She signed both. Within weeks, Elena was leading think tanks on adaptive logistics, but she did more than contribute ideas. She started something bigger. She began quietly mentoring young engineers, especially women, especially mothers returning to tech. She redesigned her own position to be flexible, human, a model for others. In the hallway outside the main Aegis lab, a quote was added to the wall, something Jamie said during one of their working lunches. "Do not call it a glitch just because it does not fit your rulebook." Jamie, now nicknamed the Drone Whisperer, had built his first beta drone model with a hybrid control interface. It was far from perfect, but it worked. It flew. And he could not stop smiling when it did. 6 months later, the skyline outside Aegis Dynamics shimmered with early morning sunlight. Inside the glass tower's top floor, Elena stood in a sleek but minimalistic innovation lab. A digital screen behind her read, "Project Orion, Ethics and Intelligence for the Next Era." She looked different now, not because of makeup or wardrobe, but because she walked like someone who had stopped apologizing for being brilliant. Project Orion, her brainchild, was more than just a research wing. It was a sanctuary for what she called responsible innovation, ethical AI, inclusive systems. She handpicked a team of renegades, coders, theorists, dreamers, and parents, especially mothers like her who had left the industry but never lost their spark. She built it on her terms. No 20-hour workdays, no artificial urgency, just clear purpose and uncompromising curiosity. Across the atrium, Jamie was bent over a touchscreen panel the size of a dinner table. He was debugging a mission wrestling simulator, surrounded by 3 adult engineers taking notes. At 9 years old, he had become the youngest beta tester in Aegis history. He treated the honor with a mix of comic sarcasm and earnest discipline. He still wore mismatched socks, still insisted on pineapple pizza, still called his mother Boss One, and every day at 3 o'clock he would barge into Cole's office with questions like, "Why does your drone firmware smell like spaghetti code again?" Or, "Can we install a juice box dispenser next to the AI core?" Cole, to his own surprise, loved every second of it. Their personal relationship had unfolded slowly, respectfully. Elena made it clear from the start that she had no interest in being anyone's tech Cinderella. Cole never treated her like one. What bloomed between them came with awkward glances, long silences, and bursts of unexpected laughter. He started showing up with her coffee at 7:30 every morning. 1 sugar, no cream. She teased his tie choices relentlessly, especially the navy one with the tiny white drones. He stopped wearing that one. Theo, meanwhile, had declared himself Jamie's unofficial fun uncle. He was terrible at golf, worse at mentoring, and somehow the perfect comedic balance to their world. He let Jamie hack into the internal camera network for security testing, then rewarded him with gummy worms and a copy of a declassified operations manual. "Just do not tell HR," he always whispered, dramatically. The three of them, Elena, Jamie, and Cole, became a kind of strange, wonderful little family. They had dinner together every Friday, played board games on rainy weekends, and argued about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. The lab staff joked that Project Orion is powered by caffeine, sarcasm, and the belief that weirdos save the world. But behind the quips and breakthroughs was something deeper. Cole watched the way Jamie lit up whenever his mother entered the room. He watched the way Elena calmed chaos with a single phrase, a quiet smile, or a bold technical insight no one else had considered. And every day he felt more certain, not just about the future of his company, but about the life he wanted to build with them. Together, the auditorium was packed. Hundreds of students, parents, and educators filled the seats for the National Youth Science Expo. At center stage stood a podium almost too tall for Jamie Moore, age 9, dressed in a tiny blazer and sneakers that blinked every time he shifted his weight. He took a breath, then another. For a moment, he looked like he might turn and bolt. Then he spotted his mother in the front row. Elena, beaming, hands clasped together, eyes already shimmering. Cole Maddox sat beside her, one hand resting protectively over hers, offering a subtle, grounding squeeze. Jamie straightened. He leaned into the microphone. "I used to think being smart made you weird," he said, voice cracking slightly but holding strong. "At school it got me teased. At home it meant I accidentally hacked the thermostat once." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "But my mom," he continued, his voice steadying, "taught me that smart is strong, especially when it is kind. She told me that if I see a problem no one else sees, it is not to make me feel different. It is to help." Silence. And then a swell of applause, growing into a standing ovation. Jamie blinked fast, trying not to cry. He gave a little nod, turned, and rushed off stage, straight into Elena's arms. "You were amazing," she whispered into his hair, holding him tight. Cole knelt beside them. Jamie pulled back and looked at both of them. "You ready to go home, genius?" Elena asked softly, brushing a hand through his messy curls. Jamie grinned. "Only if Cole drives. His car has better snacks." Cole smirked. "Gummy bears and granola bars, first-class service." They stood together, three silhouettes framed by the warm afternoon light pouring through the auditorium doors. No longer the waitress and the odd kid in the back of the room. No longer the CEO burdened by pressure and legacy. They were a family now. Unlikely, beautiful, brilliant. They walked off shoulder to shoulder as the sun dipped low and gold across the pavement. From survival to belonging to love. A new chapter was already unfolding. Together. If this love story touched your heart, do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more soul-stirring stories, emotional stories, and heartwarming stories just like this one. We absolutely love reading your comments, so please tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Have you ever seen brilliance show up in unexpected places? Or watched love grow from the most unlikely beginnings? Share your stories with us in the comments below. We truly cannot wait to hear them. Thank you for being part of this storytelling journey. See you in the next one.